Hello and welcome to this opening exploration video featuring an introduction to the Alien Gambit. And in this video, I'm just going to kind of go over moves that were played according to a database, and then afterwards I'll put the opening into the computer and just see what the computer says about the main moves. But the Alien Gambit, if you're not familiar with it, it's kind of tricky. It's in the Caro Kann. This is the starting position on the board now of the Alien Gambit. And so I'll go back, through the moves to the beginning and show you how you get to this Alien Gambit. Basically, white will play e4, and then we have c6, the Caro Kann defense. Now, often in the Caro Kann, white will just play d4, placing both pawns in the center, of course, because black, is allowing him to do that for the moment, and it controls a lot of space in the center. And now, in the Caro Kann, often you continue with this d5 move backed up by the c6 pawn, and you're attacking the e4 pawn here. So white has different options, but if you want to go into this Alien Gambit, you can just defend with the knight here, protecting the pawn, and usually black will capture, getting rid of one of your pawns in the center, and after a recapture, black can try to play this move here, knight to f6, and according to the database, this is the Caro Kann defense main line. I think it's also known as the Tartakower variation of the Caro Kann. And generally, white will try to capture here, or will go ahead, not try, but will go ahead and capture. And that's the number one move, to just take, and then you'll double up black's pawns here, either with e takes f6 or g takes f6. But if you want to go into this Alien Gambit, we have this move, knight to g5. And I've run into trouble with this move myself, where I was playing the Caro Kann with the black pieces, trying to go into that Tartakower variation, but my opponent didn't cooperate, and they jump the knight here to g5, and they're immediately targeting this weak f7 pawn. And the only thing protecting that is the king. So now, what is the best response? Let's see here. The number one response, I'll take a look at that first. I'll just do the main number one moves first so you can get an idea of how the game might progress. But it looks like h6 is played most often. And before I play that move, we'll see that that was played 75 times, which is not, that's not a lot of games in a big database. So I would imagine, because this Alien Gambit is not played so much, it looks like you can really surprise your opponent. They probably don't see it too often, and I wasn't sure what to do with it myself. So my plan is to just do a little introduction to get you familiar with the main lines in this database. And in the future, I'll do a deeper dive into this Alien Gambit. And I'd also like to do some videos showing, future videos showing some of the best players, some chess masters playing the Alien Gambit or defending against it, just to see how they would play it. All right, so here h6 is the number one move. You immediately attack that knight. And the only thing I could say about this, yes, you immediately force that knight to make a decision. Retreat, or go ahead and gambit the knight for this pawn, and you take black's right to castle away if he captures that pawn, which he should, because you would be forking the rook and the queen. So here the number one move is to go ahead and capture. But it looks like it's also possible to retreat the knight to h3 or f3. But, if you're going to play the alien gambit, you have to go ahead and capture here. So the knight is gambited for this pawn, and, of course, the king is pretty much forced to capture unless you want to give up a queen or the rook. Probably the queen, of course, would be captured. So king captures, and now the number one move, and it looks like if bishop to c4 check and bishop to d3 bishop moves are played, apparently black won both of those games. But now the number one move, knight to f3, played 129 times. White wins 45% of the time, but it looks like, what is this, black has a 50% ratio here. So it looks like, maybe the alien gambit is not an entirely sound opening or gambit, but when you're playing over the board and there's chaos and your king is kind of out in the open here, it's a different story. So the most played move here, knight to f3, and it looks like black usually pushes this pawn to e6. One thing you have to watch out for, I would say you probably do not want to play bishop to g4, although it looks like black won that game, because bishop to g4, there is a possibility of jumping up here with check, and then you have the knight attacking along with the queen, two attackers and only one defender. So I don't know, maybe that's something we'll have to take a look at in the future. But for the moment, I want to just look at the main moves. And the number one move is e6. And now white usually responds with bishop to d3 with a 71% win ratio. So, that's looking, 71% win percentage. And now after bishop to d3, it looks like bishop to d6 was played most often, and it jumps up to a 91% win rate for white. So, this looks crazy how white now 92% after castling. So it looks like the number one move is for white to castle. Then the top move for black. And the top two moves, now of course it's only 9 games total, but 100% win rate for white, which is crazy. So let's just play the top moves and see what happens. Rook to f8, which you think I'm going to put the rook on the half open file here, and then get my king down in here where it's kind of like a castled position. But knight to e5 check. King to g8. Now, this is kind of strange. The number one move here, played twice with a 100% win ratio, is this. Queen up to f3. And I was wondering, well, what if this knight moves out of the way and there's a discovered attack here on the queen? But black doesn't do that. It looks like they just continue development. White does the same. Now c5 is the number one move, attacking the pawn in the center. And here, developing another piece and taking this pawn. And instead of capturing the bishop, looks like this is the number one move, attacking in the center. Queen to g3. So this is pretty crazy. And now white's winning percentage has gone down to 3% here. So if you decide to play this alien gambit, it just looks really chaotic. If you like wild, crazy games, well, you might enjoy this. But I'm kind of the opposite. I like more strategic, less tactical games. I seem to do better in those. So, I had trouble with this alien gambit. All right, queen to e7 is played most often. Just developing another piece. And now f4, helping protect the knight in the center. Black usually plays, well, here it's split between three moves. b6, c5, knight to c5, and knight to h5, attacking the queen. And that led to a draw, probably because you attack the queen, you protect this pawn, so maybe the queen moves and they go back and forth. But instead of getting into that, once again, I'm going to pick the top, or the move at the top here, b6. So if b6 is played, now we have knight to c6. So that's a problem. The queen's under attack. So queen to f7. Attack on the queen here. And that would just trap the queen. So now the queen is trapped. So of course white would win that. All right, the game just continues like this. You take the queen with check. King captures. And it looks like white went on to win with what? Knight to e5 check. Trying to trade off some material here. Now what? Rook at a to d1. Okay, so I don't want to dive too deep into any one variation. I went a little bit further in that example. But if we go back to the beginning, and once again, I'll show you how you get the alien gambit. e4, c6, the Caro-Kann is played by black. You take control of the center with both pawns. So they push their d pawn to attack your central pawn. You just defend with the knight here. So after capture and recapture, the knight attacks your undefended knight. And instead of capturing or defending your knight, you just jump up here to g5. And it looks like that is the third most played move with this alien gambit. And we looked at h6. I could take a look at that and just check out a different move or a different variation of that. So king captures, knight to f3 is played most often. And we looked at this e6 move. Well, what else could be played? Maybe a developing move. Bishop up to f5 to help block this diagonal, prevent the opponent from developing their bishop. They could still develop the bishop and attack, but it would trade off material, which black would want to do that because black is behind, or excuse me, white is behind in material, and white should try and trade more pawns or get an attack on the king, because if it goes into an endgame and material is traded down, white will have a tougher time. So here the most played move is check by the knight, king up to g8. And this is probably similar to something that happened in one of my games. Although I don't know if I had my bishop here, and I was worried about the knight jumping in here, forking my rook and bishop, and I think their bishop was already here. So anyway, in this position, it looks like bishop to c4 check. That looks pretty dangerous. They can play e6 to block, but it looks like knight to d5 is the most played move. Well, then you have queen to f3, attacking this unprotected bishop. And now, what? Bishop to e6? Wow. Bishop to e6. castling, knight to d7, putting a little bit of pressure on this knight in the center, and knight to g6, forking rook and bishop here. So it looks like played 5 times is knight at 7 to f6, just bringing the knight up, kind of blocking the path of the queen, fortifying this knight in the center. Now we have rook to e1 attacking the unprotected bishop. So bishop just drops back, targeting the knight, and knight captures the rook here. So after capture, we have what? c3, fortifying the center here. e6, backing the knight up. Bishop. Oh, the bishop drops down to d3, taking this diagonal. Bishop to d6. g4, maybe trying to get an attack going here. Queen to c7. h4. Rook to f8. Lining up on the queen. And g5. So after that, let's see. An attack on the queen. Queen to h1. And knight to g4 here. I don't know. Here, well, I guess you can't attack this. Looks like you can attack here. But I'm just going to play the main move. It looks like black went on to win here after queen to e4, threatening a mate here. So queen to e4, bishop to h2 check, king up to g2, g6, blocking that mate threat, and then bishop develops to e3 to protect this, an attack right here. But knight captures bishop. Oh, wow. Rook takes. And there we have the check, and it's not looking too good for white here. King to h1. Knight captures. Queen captures. And another attack on the king here, forcing the queen to give itself up. All right, yeah, that was a kind of a wild, crazy game. Okay, I went really deep and showed that whole game. Let's go back to the beginning another time here. So e4, c6, d4, d5. Knight defends the pawn. We have a capture, recapture. Knight attacks knight. And the alien gambit once again, targeting the f pawn. So here we looked at h6. Let's look at the second most played move, bishop to f5. Well, now we have knight to f3 usually played, h6. We sacrifice the knight, and knight to e5 check follows up here. So king to g8. Bishop to c4 check is usually played. Well, here, I think I may have had something like this in a game, and I believe I pushed this pawn up. But I don't know if the pieces were set up exactly like this. The problem with that, I guess, well, can you go here with a pawn and attack that bishop and try and drive it away? Or two pawns, moving up here eventually chasing that bishop away, which is defending the pawn if you push that pawn forward. So it looks like the number one move is to block with the knight. The knight, moves further up the board, blocks the bishop. Now, queen to f3, attacking and also adding more pressure in the center. So instead of pushing the pawn up, it looks like bishop to e6 is usually played. Oh, because of the fork. You have to watch out for that fork here, which would fork the rook and the queen. So white castles. Then we have knight up to d7 attacking. Knight forks bishop and rook. And knight at 7 to f6 here, improving the position of the knight. So here, rook centralizes and attacks the unprotected bishop. Bishop drops back, counterattacking this knight. So knight captures rook. And now c3, fortifying the pawn in the center. e6, bishop to d3, bishop to d6. And once again, we have an attack with these pawns. So queen to c7, and it's kind of looking like we're transposing back into those previous games, or the previous game that I looked at. So rook to f8, g5. We attack the queen. Queen retreats. And now we're just back into the game that we looked at earlier. All right. Well, let's go back to the alien gambit, which was this starting point. And let's see what else we have. Bishop all the way to g4, attacking the queen. And it looks like we can just, well, the number one move is just to develop the other knight. e6 is played. h3, putting the question to the bishop. And it looks like if we capture here, white went on to win. So after this retreat, black won. So we might as well take a look at that. g4 chases that bishop. The bishop drops back. And now the bishop is helping protect everything. So knight to e5, attacking the bishop and adding pressure to this pawn. What now? Knight at b to d7. We capture, getting rid of the bishop pair. After recapture, what now? Bishop to g2. Queen to c7. Castle. Bishop to d6. And after this move, it looks like white went on to win here. So let's take a look at how they won. Knight to f8. Rook to e1, lining up on the king. Knight to h7, trying to get rid of that knight. c3 fortifies the center. a5, gaining space on the queen side. Bishop to d2. Castle. h4, trying to start an attack. Now we have a4, just gaining more space. a3 slows that pawn down. Queen to a5, lining up on this unprotected bishop. Rook at a to d1. Now the bishop's protected. Queen to b5, targeting the unprotected pawn. Bishop drops back. All right, I'll just play this out. So capture, recapture. The knight now's attacking that pawn. Queen protects. And rook at a to e8, lining up on the queen. Bishop attacks the queen. queen to d5, c4 attacks that queen, so it runs. Attack the queen again, queen retreats, c5 attacking the bishop, bishop retreat. Now they're piling up on this pawn on g5. They protect. And anyway, this is an idea of how the game could go. So I don't want to dig too deep into any one line, since this is supposed to just be an introduction to give you some idea of how the different variations might go. Okay, so we kind of looked at pushing this pawn to h6, the bishop going to f5 or g4. What's another possibility? E6. I think the computer recommends this move, c5, immediately targeting this. Now, if the pawn captures, you could knock out the queen, taking away white's right to castle. So let's look at the main move first. Looks like that usually occurs. And then knight to c6, bishop up to c4, e6. Now the bishop can cover that pawn if it does eventually get captured. Castle, bishop to e7, rook to e1. Black goes ahead and castles. And after c3, this led to a draw. So h6, knights are traded, and then bishop. That's interesting. The bishop goes that way. Oh, excuse me. Bishop to e3, capture, knight captures. And then we just trade off a bunch of material here. Queen is under attack, so it develops. And queen up to d2, maybe getting ready to triple up on the d file. So this is just another example of how things could play out. All right, well, let's go back, see if there's anything else that's worth taking a look at. Let's see. How did black lose when they did this? Let's take a look at that. Looks like bishop to d3 is played the most. Now e6, develop, bishop to d6, queen up to e2, attack on that knight. Then we just trade off some material here. Queen over to g4. And here, you don't want a castle, or they can capture your pawn and you won't be able to capture back because the queen will be pinning the g-pawn. So they recommend king over to f8. Now b3, bishop to b7, bishop to b2. Oh, so now there's a threat of moving this pawn, and queen and bishop will be targeting this. So knight to f6, queen to h4, adding pressure here. Knight to d5, knight up to e5, attack on the queen. All right, anyway, this just gives you some idea of different possibilities. after queen to f3, lining up on the king here along, or this pawn as well. But the queen and king are protecting that at the moment. Rook to d8, rook to d1, and now what? c5 was played. So that seems to be a common theme, attacking this central pawn with the c pawn. Okay, I'll wrap it up there. Well, no, before I go, there was one more thing I wanted to do. So let's go back to the very beginning and turn on the analysis here and see what the computer actually says about some of these moves. You know, so the computers are so powerful these days. It's always worthwhile to just take a look, see what the computer says about whatever opening you're working on. So after e4, c6, d4, d5. So we're in the Caro-Kann. We defend, and after capture, capture, knight to f6, which it looks like that is the second best move for black. Okay, at this point, the number one recommended move by the computer is to just go ahead and take that knight, forcing your opponent to double pawns on the f file. You know, whether they capture with the g pawn or the e pawn. But, oh, and also, it looks like after that move, white has a 0.37 advantage. After this, black, it says, the computer says this is an inaccuracy, that it's a 0.27 advantage to black now. And white, or excuse me, the computer recommends the best move against white's alien gambit is to play this, c5. So this is best according to the computer. So I'll go ahead and play this out according to the best computer moves. Now, bishop to e3, it looks like that's recommended as being best for white. But it's close. So after I play this move, the computer might change its mind. Let's see. Yes, now it's saying bishop to c4 is best. So if I play that, bishop to c4, because this immediately targets the f pawn. And it looks like e6 would be the best thing to play here. So e6. Now knight to e2 might be the best move, helping defend that central pawn. And knight to c6, putting more pressure on the pawn. And it looks like instead of using the gambit, you know, and giving up the knight, the best move here would be to drop back and defend the center. And now what? a6 or bishop to e7. Let's see what this move says. a6, where you threaten to... Oh, wow, you could try and threaten to capture or trap that bishop by pushing here. And, you know, if the bishop goes here or here, you could push your c pawn and try and trap it. So, a4, probably the best move, gaining space. But it looks like c3 is recommended. So now it says that's the best move. Okay, and then after the continuation of the plan, kicking the bishop back, the bishop should go to d3. And here, bishop to b7, or capturing in the center may be best. Let's see. Computer changes its mind, and it looks like now it likes that better. So after capture, the best move is to capture with the knight. And knight to e5, counterattacking the bishop. And that should just be ignored in favor of castling maybe, or bishop to c2. Let's see what happens if we play bishop to c2. No, now they're saying that we should just go ahead and castle. All right, so that's an idea of, the best play according to the computer. But if somebody is starting with the alien gambit moves, they're probably going to continue on with the gambit. So let's see after the normal moves here. Now we have the alien gambit. So if they go ahead and play the top recommended move, this move, what should white do? What if white goes ahead and just plays that? King captures. Well, here it looks like black is just, quite a good bit ahead here. The recommended moves, maybe you would go here. Let's see if they like that move the best. No, now the recommendation is knight to f3 because you're getting ready to threaten here. So what now? e6. I don't know if I would like that, but that would prevent this pawn from pushing forward, and the computer says that's best. All right, so now bishop to c4, pinning that pawn. Apparently that's the best move, although now the computer likes knight to g5. All right. Now bishop to c4. See if that's best. But, what does black gain? It looks like, or excuse me, what does white gain? It looks like black's advantage has grown here. Okay, so let's go back some. Back to the beginning of this alien gambit. If black plays the best move, according to the computer, that move, well, what should you do? Maybe bishop to b5 check. Looks like that is the best move for white. But then they could block. Bishop to d7. Now, what this might do is just trade down material. Would you really want to do that if you're thinking about gambiting this knight over here on f7? So the best move is to capture. That just helps your opponent develop the other knight. And now knight to e2. And why wouldn't you just go up here to f3? But they like that move the best, helping protect the pawn. Okay, you get the idea. I won't dig too deep. I want to wrap this up because it was supposed to just be an introduction. So if we go back here and if that's the best move, a lot of times they'll just bring that up, and it looks like h6 is the best move here for black, and often they'll just go ahead and capture. King captures, and this is what you'll see more often in the alien gambit. And now what? The bishop can develop with a check. Pawn blocks. Now, if they blocked with the bishop, oh, well, that would be a problem because you could just run the knight up, checking the king. The king would have to retreat, and then you'd pick off the bishop. So it looks like that's a better move. Queen up to e2, threatening to put some pressure on that. And wow, here they recommend that you just take like that. Bishop develops, knight develops, and castle queenside, knight up to d5, knight up to d5. Okay, that move, which kind of blocks things up a little bit. All right, anyway, the computer says that black has the edge here by almost 2 pawns, or 1 3/4 pawns or more. So, feel free to leave comments on if you've played the Alien Gambit, if you've had to play against it, what you think of it. This was supposed to just be an introduction to give you an idea of some lines. In the future, I would like to, maybe dig deeper into this Alien Gambit and then show some games played by chess masters to see how they handle this Alien Gambit, either playing it or playing against it. All right, well, as I said, feel free to leave comments, like and subscribe to support the channel. Thank you for watching and have a super chess day.